kind of the imposter question that you
Yeah.
ask for people
Yeah.
out there. I love to tell really cool, good stories about the wins and having good balance and in your life. But truthfully, when I was the most successful, okay, I had no balance. It was all
Mhm.
about the game, and I want to be able to coach up young people the right way, and that's kind of why I don't overly coach football these days, because the old school way of of doing it did not create balance in your life, and it was a
Yeah.
massive obsession and focus. And when you're a 5'5" running quarterback in the 40 and can barely lift a buck 85, okay, um, heavy focus was something really important to me.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. Each week, co-hosts DJ Eitzen and Harry Wilson sit down with some of the most exceptional individuals across sports, business, and beyond. From world-class athletes and peak performance coaches to visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influential authors, they dive deep into the stories and strategies that drive extraordinary success. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
Today's guest is a true football icon, Bernie Kosar. Renowned for his standout career as the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, Kosar dazzled fans with his leadership and skill on the field. He was a key figure in the Browns' playoff successes during the 1980s, including leading the team to 3 AFC championship games. Kosar's impressive resume includes winning a national championship for the Miami Hurricanes in 1983, earning the AFC Player of the Year honor in 1986, and a Super Bowl ring as the backup quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys in 1993. With his innovative playing style and strategic brilliance, Kosar left an amazing footprint on the game. Join us as we explore the journey and achievements of one of the NFL's most respected quarterbacks. Let's go. All right, so Bernie, let's just jump right in, and we're just really excited about the time we have with you. So I think just to get started, I would love for you to, like I mentioned earlier, everybody knows who Bernie Kosar is, but I don't want to assume that everybody knows who Bernie Kosar is. And so, I'd love for you to maybe just really catch us up, post NFL career. We'll get to talking about the NFL career, pre-NFL career, kind of some of the story, but just catch us up on, what Bernie's up to these days. Just touch on your transition from sports to business and current endeavors, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. It's one thing to talk about our game and our football and what we did playing on the field. But as you know, I hit 60 years old, and I'm in what I used to say was the late third quarter, early fourth quarter of my life. But when you get diagnoses like I've gotten in terms of, say, the last 6 to 8 months, where 6 months ago I was diagnosed with early stage Parkinson's. 7 years ago, I was told I have 5 years left of cognitive brain function. Basically about 14, 15, 16 weeks ago, I was put on the liver transplant list. So those are incredibly discouraging type diagnoses that you get and when you're actually told that. But for a guy now that retired in 1997 after 12 years in the NFL, I was saying up till about 18 months ago, I've had probably 40 or 50, 40 surgeries, 80 broken bones, 100 concussions, 14 or 15 seizures. The last couple seizures, I was in a coma for 72 and 96 hours. And when I retired in 97, started with a lot of the surgeries in 98, 99, the physical therapy and the medical stuff was changing a little bit, and there's certain prescriptions and stuff. So a lot of the prescriptions and medications that they started using back for the pain medications that go along with the surgeries and stuff, I'm not proud to say, but from retiring in 97, starting to get heavy surgeries in 98, 99, 2000, to really spend most of this century, most of the last 3 decades, up until hopefully my last seizure in 2017, where I was in a coma for 96 hours, and the doctor said, "Hey, you're a tough guy. You're doing great. Keep up with your prescriptions and protocols." And I'm like, "Bro, I'm on like 65 different pills a day." By this time of the day, I would have been so medicated up that the ability to, one, remember that I'm talking to DJ and the awesome Harry Wilson, and to be able to enunciate, articulate, communicate multiple syllable words was truly like in jeopardy to almost impossible. So to try to figure out a holistic lifestyle, to try to figure out how to be cognitively present, bluntly, to figure out how just to be here, that in itself was something that was in jeopardy for me. And you know, I'm sitting here today, we're talking to you, I'm in Ohio and that, and we're coming off a situation where I love my number 19. It's really special from playing, and it's hard to believe that that's north of 30 plus to almost 40 years ago I wore that number 19 jersey. But that's the amount of people that will commit suicide in the state of Ohio today. In the last 6 to 7 days, we've had, just in the state of Ohio, over 100 people die from the overdose death with the fentanyl issue. So with me being should have been either one of those two statistics, to figure out how to be healthy today, again, to be cognitively present, to not now have taken a pill or drank in 7 years. I don't say that to brag, but I do say that because I'm sitting here pain free and not on pain pills. And I debatably was one of the slowest NFL quarterbacks ever to play in an era where you take an inordinate amount of hits. So proudly to be feeling good, and from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint, where bluntly, again, the diagnoses that I got, to where even in a good, healthy lifestyle, I still end up diagnosed and having liver failure and early stage Parkinson's. And I love the era of football. I love the stuff that happened with us on the field in terms of what it taught us and the excitement and the lifestyle it provided. But wow, so many of the guys that used to run me over, I should have wore a shirt today, but I wore a jersey that Michael Kosar, one of the great outside linebackers from the Detroit Lions, who used to really sack me with great violence, but playing against him, Reggie White, Jerome Brown, Chris Dolman, and to see all those great men, and for them not to have made basically 60 years old, and for them not to be with us right now, to see we were just coming through the Hall of Fame where Steve McMichael went in, and what's going on with him and ALS right now. So to see so many of my teammates, to see so many of the guys that played against me, so many of the guys that laid on top of me talking about how they're going to decapitate me and it's going to happen, and then, you know, the levity of that, and then for them not to be with us now, it's emotionally challenging, but it's also something that almost kind of put me in a mindset. And again, that's where I love what Limitless kind of does, or a mindset without the limits, without accepting that that's just your chosen fate, for your brain to dissipate, for your cognitive skills to evaporate, for your physical abilities to walk and exercise to dissipate as you get into the fourth quarter of your life. And when you get diagnoses like mine, I'm probably trying to be way too positive and say late third quarter to early fourth quarter, because it's probably late fourth quarter to overtime when you get those type of diagnoses. So instead of really accepting it, instead of really just be pretending or acting like a victim, it's really like an opportunity for me to try to embrace trying to get better. And when you actually find things that are able to make you cognitively present, just not talk about it, and that convergence of the right mindset with puts you in the right mindset, and what football taught you to do about never giving up, never standing on the ground. I mean, and that convergence that you're able to have learned at the foundational level of life, almost like what you guys talk about at Limitless, of instilling a fundamental mindset, the foundation of it. That foundation was laid in me paying dividends now. And I kind of thought that maybe in this later part of the life that I was put on this earth to have played football, growing up in Northeastern Ohio, growing up an hour from Brown Stadium.
Shout out to Youngstown. Shout out to Youngstown.
Shout out to Y-Town, yeah, DJ. But then, you know, being that close to Pittsburgh and being in between there, and really, you think living a boyhood dream to grow up when everybody in your family was steel workers that worked at U.S. Steel. And in the 1970s, that's how old I am, the steel mills closed. And it wasn't as fun. It was challenging. And sports was really the only way to get out, to better yourself. And kind of that fear or those lack of options makes you either quit and go by the wayside, or if you have the toughness that is in our area, coupled with the good coaching and the foundational stuff that football taught me, it gives you a chance in life. And now to add other components to the foundational level of things like that, like what I believe I'm working on, what you guys are working on at Limitless, gives and the next generation of younger people the chance to be that much more successful. And I'm super proud to kind of feel like now, here in the fourth quarter of my life, that's really what God's had his plan or message for me, for us, to be able to bring out to people like we're doing today. As much as I thought it was going to be kind of the easy route, let's cruise out and sign a couple autographs and go to events. God had a bigger plan for us.
So,
just like our minds, just like I believe our minds are capable of, and our bodies are capable of way more than we know.
So much more. You're right, Bernie. No doubt. And it was funny when we met you, and that was the first time I've ever met you. I left and told Harry, I go, Bernie is about purpose. That was the word that came to me when I met you. Like, your purpose and the impact on people was so much bigger than wanting to talk about football or anything that you had done in the past. You were rattling off names of people that had been impacted, your brothers in the NFL that had been impacted by suicide and you know, and different traumatic things that had happened. And you knew the names, you knew the stories. And that really touched me in terms of, you know, when you talk about impacting people and taking the gifts that God gave you in terms of, you know, with football, but then doing something at a bigger purpose afterwards. And I mean, it really stood out. But I, you know, I also think about, because we, you know, when we talk about the origin of like what made, when you were in Youngstown, right, growing up, and you know, what made you think that you could make the NFL, that you could get to that next level? And when was it that you knew that you had the opportunity to be able to take that next big step?
Well, first and probably foremost is I didn't think I was going to make the NFL growing up in Youngstown, and really didn't plan on it. Yeah, you dreamed about it, but that was in your Disney World experience. And anybody who grew up in Youngstown in the 70s, whose dad was a steel worker, had no chance to even go to Disney World, let alone have that dream of going to Disney World and are really playing in the NFL. So really sports and the Youngstown toughness was really a great way to just try to get a scholarship. You know, bluntly, just because I wasn't going to college if I didn't get a scholarship, because we couldn't really afford that type of education at that time and stuff. And, you know, and DJ, as you were asking that, I think about that, but also I was thinking about how you mentioned when we were talking, and, you know, I'm here today in Cleveland, but I'm really in Chagrin Falls, and how you had mentioned how we had talked about even some of the tough things you don't want to talk about. Like we were talking about the suicides and the overdose deaths. And unfortunately, you know, I could have been either one of those two statistics. So trying to not sit here and say, okay, hey, just say, look at me, I did this, but being able to show people that there are some things and a couple of tips to get them, you know, going in the right direction. But
that's right.
for a guy who was challenged to admit these type issues and to talk about it, and even, you know, bringing this up now, it's tough. But I'm so old, I can go back to Dave Durrison conversations and Junior Seau conversations where, yeah, it's awesome that Harry and DJ and shows like this and companies like yours are so open to talking about this today. And for men out there, we challenge all men to be able to admit and let your guard down, that it's okay to admit you have some of these issues, anxieties, uncertainties and stuff, because the things that we could say today, you really couldn't say. You could barely say it today, and you really couldn't say it 5, 10, and 15 years ago.
That's right.
Because you got a lot of pushback, especially in the football tough guy chauvinism world that we grow up with, and or at least I did in that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, like, it's kind of like, you know, Bernie, it's like, you know, it's hard enough for men to speak up on kind of mental health and what they need, and or maybe even kind of understanding that there's a need there. And then when you think about this alpha, you know, this alpha male, you know, football player, athlete, you know, it's you know, it's even more challenging. And so you've seen the story arc. You've played in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, and now we're in 2024. You know, how are you seeing that shift, and what do you think that reason is? Why do you think there is a little bit of a shift these days than it was, you know, 30 years ago?
So I think things like social media and TV and content, you know, a lot of people pick at the negatives of stuff like that, of the constant 24/7 constant communication that's out there. And there are definitely negatives to that for sure, but I try to look at what's the positives of that. And because of the positives of that, I think Harry, DJ, they catch a lot of us men doing dumb things that before cameras you could just say I didn't do, but now you're on TV, you're out there saying it, it's documented, and then there's a trail of it too. So again, a lot of people were trying to put this cool perception out there, that negotiating perception out there. And when you start realizing, when guys like us, shows like this, you know, across different ages now, demographics, lifestyles now, but we're all talking about the same thing. There was never a show like this, even 5 to 10 years ago. So now with society, I think, and guys like you guys being open to, and I think myself being open to talk about it, you know, that really helps. And, you know, like we kind of bonded together, you know, talking about some of the stuff you guys are going through, joking about you and your brother as two sport athletes, you know, and how you handle stuff like that. But really, the DJ, to the stuff you brought up that we talked about, it isn't easy to say, I had this talk with Junior Seau and Dave Durrison about not shooting ourselves in the head and the heart. And those two guys, because nobody believed that our heads were hurting. And they, back in the old days, they say, oh, you just missed playing. We want to be young again and be on the field. Well, possibly, but that isn't why. That isn't why you have that constant demon, that noise in your head, that inability to sleep. We know that now. Heck, I'm on the east side of Cleveland. I'm in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. And one of my great teammates, DJ, you know, it's kind of the story we talked about of the Chagrin High School graduate, Notre Dame graduate, national championship in the 80s. He was in one of the University of Miami, Notre Dame,
You.
Catholic versus the convicts fight, but wins the national championship, gets drafted by the Bengals, ends up blocking for me and Bernie Kosar in 92, 93 Cleveland Browns, Bob Dahl. And why does he commit suicide on September 25th? And one of my great brothers and teammates. And again, I don't want to cry on a show. I don't bring this up just to be cool or for shock value. But these are typically the things that we don't want to talk about. I still don't really want to talk about it.
That's right.
But if we don't, as brothers, as men, say that we have these issues, I have these issues, I have these concerns, and I'm not afraid to say it. I wish that some other men would be able to say it, and or let the people around them have the freedom to be able to not be chastised if they admit they have some types of these issues, so that possibly we could save a soul from that. And bluntly, if not have to go to any more celebrations of life.
That's right.
Because they're not celebrations. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I can't
no doubt.
my mind to think like that. Yeah.
Bernie, as you were going through this, you have 4 kids, right? Is that
4?
correct? Yeah. Is it 3 girls and a boy?
3 girls and a boy. Yes.
There you go. And Harry and I, that's our connection here, is because Harry has 3 daughters, and 2 boys. So we all have 3 girls. And you mentioned when we met that family was important to you. Is there anything that you've shared with your kids and been able to show them as you're going through these experiences on what to do, what not to do as navigating your life?
Wow, DJ, fantastic question. Both my parents are alive. I'm so blessed to have the mentorship and have my I was going to say their age, but my mom gets grumpy at me if I say it. But I think they look great, and I aspire to be cognitively present at that age. But growing up in Youngstown, Ohio, dads raised kids differently, and boys and girls are raised differently. I'm not sure I buy into all that now, but that is what we learn. That's what they learned from their parents, their dads. So generationally, there's a thesis that says you could go back 14 generations of generational scarring, because each habit learns from the other. And that being said, it took me a while and I'm still learning. We learn every day. But to that point, and me starting to have surgeries. In the year 2000, I was 37 years old, had 4 kids, basically under the age of 10 years old. And I start all those surgeries and physical therapies and pain medications and depression meds and anxiety meds that we were talking about, the Adderalls, the Zolofts, the Oxycontins and stuff. And I say that as we're talking about parents and parenting and kids, because there's such a thing going on, and it's become a way, way more scripted and aggressive. But here I am. I'm right now weighing at my playing weight from 1985. I'm 210 pounds.
210, 6'5",
6'5", 210. But in the year 2000, I was a couple Pop-Tarts north of 320. Okay, wow. Not proud to say that, but here I am north of 320. Okay. And here I have a 10-year-old daughter who's south of 90 pounds. How are we both getting scripted for 100 milligrams of Adderall? So that was something, again, probably equally for myself, if not more, for children and my kids out there. And for the parents your guys' age that are having kids that are in that 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 range. Those are tricky times. Look at us 3 guys. The world looks at us as successful men, and we don't want to sit down all day, let alone if you're 9, 10, 11 and you're more athletic, you don't want to sit. You could easily end up scripted these days, as I probably would have been at that age, and my daughter was. So how we figure
Bernie,
out how to help them was something that's absolutely been a passion of mine, and why I've been so active with
So
this.
great.
I love that, man. How old are your kids now?
34, 32, 27, and 23.
Nice.
Wow.
You passed the quiz. You passed the quiz. Good job.
Yeah, don't.
My son's the youngest, so we're estrogen challenged. Okay. There's a
Yeah,
little-
that's great. Man. That's great, man. I love that. Well, that's awesome. I mean,
yeah, I'm actually awesome that I'm here on this day, that I have a couple people actually listening to me, because that doesn't happen all the time in the house.
yeah, man. That's right. I love that.
great.
Well, I think that when we talk about, both handling success and handling adversity, sometimes those two things are happening at the same time, right? Like you could be at your highest highs, and in the meantime, another area of your life, it's their struggles, and you're in the middle of a high, and then here comes a low, right? In football, it's a violent game. There's injuries abound, right? You just kind of pray for health and hope for minimize attrition as from a team perspective. I mean, you certainly achieved a ton of, significant success early in your career, including, multiple playoff appearances, right? And how did you manage the pressures of the game at that position, right? And then also during that journey, especially when the times of like winning AFC winning the championships and winning games, like how did you handle like being in that position, and kind of was there any imposter syndrome that came in? Like, did you ever doubt yourself in the landscape? Because I mean, you were drafted in an era, where I think Randall Cunningham was kind of in your draft. I believe, a couple years ahead of you, there was there was Elway, and there was Marino, and there was Jim Kelly. So you were part of that kind of few years of a class of like legends, right? And here you are competing against these guys. So how did you manage that pressure, and then kind of like where you fit in that competitive landscape?
Yeah, thanks, Harry. That's a really astute, deep question right there. And so much, a few points to it, but maybe take the last part first. It's kind of the imposter question that you ask for people out there. I love to tell really cool, good stories about the wins and having good balance and in your life. But truthfully, when I was the most successful, okay, I had no balance. It was all about the game. And I want to be able to coach up young people the right way. And that's kind of why I don't overly coach football these days, because the old school way of doing it did not create balance in your life, and it was a massive obsession and focus. And when you're a 5'5" running quarterback in the 40 and can barely lift a $185, okay, heavy focus was something really important to me. But the brilliant question and for people out there listening, the imposter question is really telling, and it's to why I do the You Matter, not because of the University of Miami. It's really self-confidence and self-esteem. And as men, again, we're all trying to just pretend we got it all. That we, and again, I love how I grew up. I love where I grew up. I love my father, and he taught me so many cool things. But there's a DJ, you could chime in on our Northeast Ohio, Youngstown, is men never admit that they're fallible, that they're weak, that we have self-doubt. And flat out, let me say that at the beginning of my career, okay, and at the end of my career, there were imposter issues. And that's where You Matter, self-confidence, self-esteem. And I only say because I didn't have it. My words were good. I was good on these type interviews, in front of the camera. You would say the right things. But in the heat of battle, when the bullets are flying and it's live on the quarterback, did you really, truly believe in yourself? It's easier said than done. So for the young quarterbacks, the young players, young people out there, it's men in particular. That's why I'm fixated on the adolescent, the high school, the younger kids, because young boys, I was the quarterback in high school. I was the quarterback in college. I was one of the biggest kids. I was supposedly popular. Man, and if I had no confidence and self-esteem, then most other people, I imagine, probably did too. So when you have that issue, and don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're weak or you're inadequate or you're different. Most of us, if not all of us, have that self-doubt in that. And
That's right.
and again, why I really, besides what you guys are doing, the limitless, a mindset without limits. Okay. And when you really put yourself in that spot and you're open with yourself, that I do have some of these issues, I maybe don't have some of these confidences. Okay. And you admit it to yourself and you figure out a way around it. And then when you really do figure out how to optimize your performance, with a mindset without limits, and you can optimize and actually do the performance.
Yeah.
You exponentially grow as a person. You grow with your confidence. And I don't want to screw up the picture, but if I have a t-shirt behind me from Coach Howard Snellenberger, God bless him.
Man, legend.
He gave
legend.
me my start. Okay. And he says, to believe is to be strong. And we want to believe, and we say we believe. But once you actually did it, you really believe. And I try to put people, I try to put myself, I absolutely try to put my 4 kids and anybody that comes in contact with me, I try to help them believe in themselves. Because when you're able to do that, you minimize kind of the need to have to be the imposter. But I do want to tell people listening, don't feel bad if you catch yourself saying, God, I had or you're a poser, or you kind of made it up, or most people are. Okay. Most people are. So don't feel like you're inadequate or weak because
DJ, you probably seen the same thing, but sometimes like the greatest at whatever their craft is, athlete, business, entrepreneur, whatever it might be, a lot of times there's some level of delusion, some little layer of delusion that exists because they're trying to build a story in their head. In many cases, it's a story that hasn't happened yet. Right. And so, because a lot of people struggle with like, well, how do I have belief if I've proven to myself, the opposite, that I haven't been able to achieve it. Right. But sometimes it's a not yet component to it. And so you have to continue to kind of tell yourself a story to generate that belief. And sometimes it may be, for at least for other people, for the observers, it may be seen as delusion, right? Like, this guy thinks he can do what, or he can do that. No, absolutely. He's too small. He's too big. He's too slow, or whatever it might be. And so I think that it's really interesting when we watch kind of some of the greatest performers across sports, business, and everything in between. And somewhere in their journey, there was this level of delusion that they bought into that ended up being reality. And then the next layer of delusion set in because now they're trying to take it to another level, right? And so sometimes the artistry in your own story is kind of in that delusion and that story that you can tell yourself and that belief that you have to create for yourself.
That's beautifully said. That's actually so profound.
The other thing, Bernie, I see too, is like after you have the belief, then like when you were a kid and you said that, teachers or doctors wanted to put you on Adderall to, settle you down, that same motor is what helped that belief come into a reality. That, that in the work ethic, the drive, the actions, the behaviors that helped you ultimately get to your goals, that was embraced in the sport of football. So that's another cool part of your story that I'm picking up. That is like, not only did you believe, but then you put the motor behind it. And that's really, I think that's something our audience needs to hear.
Oh, thank you. And as you're saying that, for the younger people, and even for people who aren't younger, it's not too late to embrace your passion. And when you're passionate about it and you have that energy, it's okay to focus and go down that rabbit hole. And I was joking earlier that, when I was somewhat successful playing football, I really didn't have balance in my life. So you don't necessarily need to have balance as long as you find something you like that you're passionate about. And then I immerse myself in that with these positive vibes, thoughts, dreams. And I tell younger people, it is okay to dream, even if people say you're delusional.
Yeah.
But you could being positive gives you a chance to dream big and at least try to accomplish that.
Bernie, you mentioned your coach. Is there anybody else that helped kind of reinforce your mindset as you were going through your journey?
Yeah, thanks. I mentioned my parents, the strength of my mom, the leadership of my dad, foundationally, that's absolutely there. But when I reflect back on my football career and some of my mentors like that, yes, they were my football coaches, my career, but they really were my mentors, my leaders, the role models that I really looked up to. And I look at Earl Morrill and Howard Schnellenberger as my first two coaches at the University of Miami, with Jim Kelly and Vinny Testaverde in that quarterback room, with Mark Trestman and Gary Stevens, that both ended up magical coaching careers in college and the pros. And then to have Jimmy Johnson the next year. And I'm so proud to have been the only quarterback to have played at the University of Miami, Super Bowl with the Cowboys, and then finish my career with the Dolphins and be with Jimmy Johnson 3 times. Then
wow.
have Marty Schottenheimer, Lindy Infante, the great Bud Carson, and then to start out with Bill Belichick and win his first game, ironically, as his quarterback in Foxborough, and to foundationally be with him in his youth. And actually would think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I really think that foundationally I helped lay a path for some of the things that we experienced together. So I'm super proud of that. And then
Really cool
to go down and be with Jimmy Johnson again, Jerry Jones, and then to go with Don Shula and Dan Marino, okay, with the Dolphins. I mean, then to have Jimmy Johnson again, like that leadership, that amount of people, that yes, on a daily basis, yes, on an annual basis, to be with them and their mindsets of how they did things on and off the field. It wasn't just football. They ended up really being life's lessons.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
That's a whole list of, that's a whole bunch of Hall of Famers, DJ.
I'm looking around at my friends. I'm like, I hang out with Harry Wilson. Let's see.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, because I mentioned that era that you came up in, and you were at the U, obviously, and people have seen the 30 for 30s and the the allure that the U brought to the table back in the early 80s. And in fact, I was watching Miami play this weekend, and I was like, oh, are they back? And
right.
And I saw them on the Bernie. I don't know if you saw the game. I'm guessing you probably did, or at least peeked in on it.
Yeah.
Did you see the footage of the players at Miami going up to the Florida Gators? Recruits, and being like, and this is at Florida, DJ. They're in Gainesville. They have Florida recruits there, and the Miami players are going up to the recruits after the game and being like, "Are you sure you want to go to Florida? Like, come to the U." But that swagger, swagger
so,
is you were part of that swagger, Bernie.
Yeah, when we talk about like the imposter syndrome and the University of Miami, that team in the 80s really helps grow your confidence and your belief in yourself. And that so epitomizes what maybe, Harry, you're saying is maybe delusional type things that people would think you would think, but the expectation and height that we had expected out of ourselves, and how you were supposed to act and conduct yourself from a belief in yourself standpoint really was pushed into you. And the coaches really manifested it within you. And that really did start laying the foundation for, how I wanted to believe in myself. But the truth is, I didn't have it at first. I had to lead those guys pretending, that I could do that stuff. And just to that, you guys are too young, and most of the listeners are way too young to remember that actually that Canes Gator game that we were all loving, that I should just shut up and say great Canes W, that was my first start. And DJ asking, hey, did I think I was going to be pro in high school? Okay. And I answered it the way I did within terms of just wanting to get a scholarship to get through college and stuff. That was doubly confirmed on Bernie Kosar's first start and first pass in the collegiate game. 1983, I want you all just to remember that we won the national championship and we beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. But actually, the first game of the year was at the Gators at the Swamp. Okay, my first pass was backed up on the end zone, and I'm going to show my age, but a great Gator and a great Chicago Bear, the great Wilbur Marshall. Okay, on my first play, drilled me into the red brick wall that surrounds Gator Field in the Swamp. Okay, I'm laying on the field. Okay, my first concussion right there. I got 80,000 people screaming at me. I'm like, God, I must really be concussed. They don't even know how to clap. They're backwards clapping. I'm laying on the ground like, I ain't ever going to be any good in this game. I got to get my degree.
Right. No, that's such a great story.
Bernie, it's like my brother's, first game was against South Carolina down in I guess Columbia, right? Yeah. And he had maybe 5 or 6 plays into the game, he was concussed and laying on the ground, motionless. And Erin Andrews was out there on the field. She comes off to the side and tries to find, Russell's parents. In this case, it was myself and my mom and my uncle Ben, and like came up. We were, because he was motionless for a few minutes, and I was like, this is how it's going to be. Right. But much like yourself, found another way to get out there probably a few games later, and the rest is history. But
it's funny you mentioned that with your brother and I mentioned it just quickly in one of my quarterback rooms at the University of Miami in 1983. But Mark Trestman was the guy who really sat with us young QBs in 1982 and 83. And coached us up on the fundamentals of offense.
He's a genius, man. He's an offensive genius, Mark Trestman.
And then I remember him saying to me, hey, you got to check out this quarterback that we want to bring to NC State with Chuck D'Amato called Russell Wilson. Okay, I remember the late 90s looking at him and then coming up to NC State with him. But that scheme, and being a Browns guy and the Browns now Steelers, and him being there. Yeah. The foundation that me and him learned from the University of Miami system / Mark Trestman. People say the game has changed a ton, and it may apparently change the core fundamentals that the 1983 National Championship Miami Hurricanes ran is a complete offense that the 1972 Miami Dolphins ran, the only undefeated football team that's won a Super Bowl under Don Shula and stuff. And that system that was a convergence of Don Shula and the Paul Brown system, coupled with Howard Schnellenberger and the Paul Bear Bryant system, and putting that convergence together. And the way they understood protections was genius. And it still works to this day. It's why I could not even watch film and still look at it and be able to talk about it. And why your brother could bounce around now to different systems and still fundamentally understand what to do and absolutely know how to protect himself better than most systems, because that system that was in the 72 Dolphins still stands up with a protection standpoint today.
Yeah. That's so good. You mentioned college football, and we've been talking about that a little bit. Given the rise of the NIL and some of the substantial earnings that these youth athletes and kids are going to be making now, What advice would you offer them on managing their finances?
Yeah, so here I am as a very proud guy trying to represent intelligence and sophistication as a football player, but then also as a academic All-American and a finance economics major who admitted that he has minimal balance in his life and loves sports and health and wellness. So I did not do it well, okay? And I ended up doing bankruptcy in that. So not proud again of that either, but I say that not to just gloat and, talk about stuff, but I say that as a kind of warning, okay, out there to people, because I'm supposedly looked at as smart, okay, and I screw up, okay. So if people who are supposedly smart can screw up, okay, then all of us are susceptible to it. And I want to be able to say, okay, that all people are good out there and all people care. And a lot of people's words say that, but their actions don't back it up, especially when it comes to money and stuff. So
yeah,
I love my family. I love them so much and I want to help them with it. But I highly recommend everybody to get a professional, not in your family for it, and then have your family watch it and stuff. Because if you get the accounting professionals that are good, now there are bad ones that take from you on that, and attorney who has your best interest, they're at least bonded. And if they take stuff, you could sue them. Okay.
Yeah.
When it's your family and that, okay, it gets way trickier and it's harder to separate sometimes things like that. And as players and families, okay, growing up in the 70s in Youngstown, that wasn't the mecca of cash laying around. So I wish we would have had it. I wish my family would have had it. And I want these kids and their families to have it. And they shouldn't feel bad. They should figure out how to, take advantage of this current system with it, but try to put it away. Try to get it in situations where you're able to save it for the future, because I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to have played up 12 years in the NFL. But the average career is about 3.4 years. The race, so basically most players are out of the league by the age of 25. So yeah, you could make what you think is enough money in those 5 to 7 years, okay, that could or should last a lifetime. Odds are it's not. So you really got to figure out, to Harry and DJ, a mindset without limits. When you try to build the right foundation, instill the fundamental mindset right now of how to enrich your culture and optimize your performance, that also goes on the field and that goes on these situations too. So
that's a good point.
Being able to be versed in this with sometimes other people that are professionals, okay, and then while you're doing it, also, like, I've admitted, multiple times I didn't have balance. And a lot of the kids out there are way more athletic than me, okay, than us, okay, that they could just maybe get to a certain point with distractions and stuff. But the more you focus and the more you stay on task now, the better you're going to be. And now with the NILs, I actually think you don't have to rush to get to the NFL. So, like, most people, we all think we're going to be in the NFL, but now if you're able to build a brand and build a relationship and stay at a place, if you can go to college for 6 years now, because with the way the rules are, you could really get extra years. Now, if you're able to sit in Columbus, Ohio, and Miami, Florida, and Columbia, South Carolina, Morgantown, West Virginia, I was in this year, you're going to develop really cool relationships. And I'll say this again for people, it's the wild, wild west. It's terrible out there. Yes, there is an imbalance. It's not at all set up right yet. But I got to say, for a guy who went to the University of Miami in the early 80s, right after Mario Fidel Castro had a Mario boat lift, okay? And he opened up his jails. And the movie Scarface came out.
Yep.
And it wasn't a movie, that was a documentary, the first half of it, for what was going on down there. Okay. There's things that you're able to do now legally, to where you're legally allowed to hang out with the CEO of a company. We could hang, Harry, DJ, we could hang out with you. You could take high school and college kids to lunch, and we don't have to sneak around the corner.
Yeah.
If you want them
That's right.
to speak at one of our events, okay, you don't have to sneak them money. They're able to hang with you and me now, as opposed to the guy selling nickel bags on the corner.
Such great advice. Yeah, that's such great advice. Yeah, that is.
He doesn't have to sneak to a third league hotel to sign 1,000 pieces of paper or trading cards in the corner now. This could all be on the open. He can meet reputable people with reputable companies that are monitored and that are above board. And now as a 18, 19, 20-year-old, you're building a cool network of real CEOs and real people that, you could call on as life gets challenging a little bit later. And that's the part for any of the younger kids and younger parents out there. You could meet, and that's the network, meeting you guys, meeting what you're doing.
Harry, that's the first time, and when talking about NIL, where somebody didn't immediately go to the amount of dollars that a kid was going to make, where you actually talk about how, again, just a testament, Bernie, to the way you always put people first and connect people. That's a huge takeaway for anybody that's listening. If you can tap into a network like that of CEOs, people that are doing elite things outside of sports, that's what's going to set your kid up, for their future. What a great take on that.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out. Like I was at a game a few weeks ago, the Morgantown, West Virginia. Mm-hmm. John Chambers, the ex-CEO of Cisco. Okay, he does the Chambers Business School at West Virginia. Now, if you're a football player or in the athletics and you're in the business school, now you get a chance to hang out with John and Elaine Chambers, the ex-CEO of Cisco. How's that for a mentor?
So cool.
As opposed to the knucklehead who's on the corner. Hey, come up to room 306 and sign 400 trading cards, and here's a few dollars.
No, it's I think the beautiful thing about NIL is creating kind of a new pathway, a new platform for amateur athletes to monetize their brand. And I think particularly I have a little sister who played at Stanford and came up kind of during the beginning of that NIL era. And we were able to see her and her teammates, really be able to actually build that brand and monetize it, which I think is fantastic. I just think it'll be interesting to see how it evolves, in the future. But, and as we close, Bernie, I think that one thing that, there's two things I want to know. One is, as you think about your journey, and how do you want people to remember you as you continue to move forward? How do you when you reflect on your career, what do you want your legacy to be? And whether they're athletes or non-athletes, how do you want people to view Bernie Kosar's footprint?
Well, thanks. I think at your age, I would have wanted to say, as a guy who won the national championship, got a chance to play for his boyhood team, win a Super Bowl, and play double-digit years in the NFL, that would have been what I thought would have been cool enough, and what my role was supposed to be. And as a guy who has deep religious belief, would be something that I didn't let God down. I did enough with some of the talents and stuff, but one of the things that I really think now I was wrong in just settling for just that, and that every day, again, Coach Snellenberger, Jimmy Johnson used to say this, somehow, some way, figure out a way to get better. Howard Snellenberger, every day, you never stay the same, you get better or worse. So in that pursuit of kind of always trying to get better. That was something that I don't really settle on now as to what was in my past. And especially with these diagnoses that have come up with early stage Parkinson's, pre-dementia, liver transplant lists, to be turning those diagnoses around, or at least delaying them, and not delaying them without the ability to be cognitively present, to actually be enjoying the game. So I almost think now that some of the stuff we talked about the overdose deaths, the 19 people committing suicide today in the state of Ohio. I work a lot with veterans, especially combat vets, and our General Hoyer and our National Guard down in West Virginia a couple weeks ago. There's 22 veterans that commit suicide a day in our country. So almost now, as we're still trying to grow and I'm trying to extend the game, as a guy who played in the second longest game ever, a double overtime game, I'm trying to kick my lifetime into late fourth quarter overtime and extend it. So almost hoping my legacy is still to be determined, of which
love it.
it's not quitting, it's not giving up. And when faced with adversity and faced with bad news, this is how you approach it and attack it without giving up. But then also now to actually have some answers, to be able to fight off addiction issues, to be able to fight off anxiety issues, to fight off suicide issues, to be able to fight those issues off and then actually get yourself healthier at the same time. I really feel like that's where I hope my legacy and my future has in store for me.
Love it, man. That's great. And I think that, that's what's really inspiring is not all the success per se, right? It is the adversity, it is the adversity and how you come out of that and how you respond to it. And for any of us really, right? And for somebody that has had your platform, that has the level of access to, some of the greats that you mentioned, right? I mean,
Yes.
what a beautiful opportunity to continue to build your. I love how you said the legacy is still being written, right? And
love it.
And I think that's for any of us. So that's really inspirational, man.
Well,
Yeah, no doubt, Bernie. I mean, we want to do whatever we can do to help you extend this fourth quarter, man. And because the amount of people that you've already impacted, and your heart and your faith and the amount of people you are going to impact, it's exciting to be able to watch that and be able to see that come to fruition. So yeah, man, keep it up. That's great, good stuff.
Well, thank you. That not only do you get me excited, DJ and Harry, you got my dogs excited.
There you go, man.
That's the dogs barking.
They wanted to chime in.
Dog pound, get it.
The dog pound. Yes.
Perfect timing for the dog pound. Listen, I know I'm a Steelers fan currently, so I can't go too hard on the dog pound, but I respect it. I can certainly respect it.
And you know what's beautiful about, as we're wrapping this up too, is I love the rivalries of, whether we were joking about the Canes Gators, we're talking about the Browns Steelers, the Battle of Ohio, Browns Bengals, and that. But in the old days, if there was a regret, it was life and death out there, and there was no fraternization. And I really love how we've somewhat matured as we're getting older now. And yeah, we'll talk the game, but from a player and kind of fan and organization perspective, I really love what the Browns and Steelers, we do on the field, but what we're doing in the communities, and we overlap. I know we like to say as Browns and Steelers we're different, but there's a lot of similarities in the love and loyalty of our teams, of our communities, of our families, and a lot of this issues that we're talking about the anxieties, the depressions, the overdose deaths, the suicide rates. They don't see demographics, they don't see fan bases, and they're in our same area. So it's kind of awesome to work together, on this and be able to talk about this. And I really like, Harry, too, what you were mentioning about, hey, we could talk here about typically all the cool things that we did, all the positives, all the great games. But like a quarterback, we're always striving for perfection in the football world, and on the field, perfection is really your goal. And you could go 70 plays in an NFL or college game, and you could have 65 great ones. So God, that's an A+ just about.
Yeah,
except
right.
in quarterbacking, and all you don't think about the 65 good ones. We obsess on the 5 bad ones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's kind of a telling right there.
Yeah.
No
sure.
question. No
Well,
question.
Bernie, we're grateful for our
Yes.
time. We're gonna have to do this again. Hopefully, you'll take us up on it. And I think one thing that you've proven, and that we like to say to our audience when we leave is you don't have to be sick to get better. So we'll see you guys on the next episode. And Bernie, it's great to see you, number 19.
Awesome.
Thank you, Bernie.
You matter.
Good to see you, brother.